As tens of thousands marched through Moscow on Sunday in memory of liberal opposition politician Boris Nemtsov, speculation about who murdered him has centred on unverified CCTV footage from near the bridge where he died.
What we do know is that Mr. Nemtsov that night had dinner with his girlfriend in a restaurant on Red Square, and after that they walked down to the river and were planning to cross the bridge to go back to his apartment on the other side. If we believe that the video footage is genuine, then that would suggest that shortly before he died, a snow-clearing truck pulled up next to them, so the moment he is shot, the couple is actually obscured behind that vehicle. Afterwards, we can also see that the person who is believed to have shot him is getting into a getaway vehicle. Then we can see the person who, in the interpretation of several people who've watched the video, could be the girlfriend, get on the snow-clearing truck. And we also see some other pedestrians after the murder walking back and forth. The remarkable thing, though, is that there has been no footage at all from all the other security cameras that are much closer to the scene. And there are rumors now that, for some strange reasons, all these cameras have been switched off on that day for maintenance or whatever reason. So it's all very mysterious.
I don't think anybody can know whether Putin directly gave an order for Nemtsov to be killed. The kind of smart thing to say is, oh no, he wouldn't have done that, it's more about the climate of fear. I don't think anyone can know that, though. I mean, it seems to me at least suggestive that Boris Nemtsov was a man who would have been followed very closely by the Russian intelligence services, particularly 2 days before a demonstration that he was going to lead. He was also shot within sight of the Kremlin, which is the most carefully monitored patch of ground in Russia for obvious security reasons. It would be hard to see how that could happen without it at least being monitored, and that people could do this and get away and that they weren't identified on camera is fairly incredible.
Boris Nemtsov, who became Deputy Prime Minister in 1997 under President Boris Yeltsin, supported Vladimir Putin when he became President in 1999, seeing the former KGB officer as a stabilizing force against corruption.
Nemtsov, when Putin first came into power, was one of his supporters. He wanted someone who could help restore order in the Russian state after the chaos of the Yeltsin years. And when we first met him at the FT, when we interviewed Putin in 1999, he very much came across as a kind of lieutenant colonel of the KGB out of central casting. He did help restore order in Russia to some extent. He cracked down on some criminality. He squeezed the oligarchs. He spread prosperity thanks to extraordinary surge in oil prices at that time. So up until 2008, you could see why a lot of Russians supported Putin.
The creeping authoritarianism, including a crackdown on the opposition after protests in 2011, moved Nemtsov against Putin.
I think he changed his mind the longer that Putin stayed, that after he came back for his third presidential term, he realized that Putin was amassing more and more personal power, and that this is incredibly dangerous in a system such as Russia. In the Soviet Union, you had a Politburo making these decisions. There was a collective decision-making, but now Putin decides everything.
In an interview with the FT at the end of February, Nemtsov warned that Putin was more dangerous than the Soviets were, and he said Putin was using Russian soldiers and letting them die in Ukraine without any acknowledgement.
He was going to argue that Mr. Putin is a traitor because he is using them to wage his war in Ukraine, but he's not owning up to that. He also mentioned several times that he thought that Mr. Putin was a very, very dangerous man, although he didn't bring that in any connection with himself.
Nemtsov's death provoked the largest demonstration Moscow has seen in 3 years. But in a growing climate of fear, as reflected in recent protests against Ukraine, the anti-Kremlin opposition has been further demoralized.
It must chill the opposition as it's intended to. It is part of the kind of new and very sinister turn in the way that Putin has been running Russia, really since the Ukrainian revolution in early last year. And the reaction to that, the militaristic reaction in Ukraine, the crackdown within Russia, the more hopeful signs, the more civilized signs coming out of Putin's Russia have really been extinguished one by one over the last year. It's now very hard to paint the Putin government in anything but rather dark hues.
And in this darkening atmosphere, it seems that Putin has changed another rule of Russian politics, that you don't kill those who are in charge before you.
Even though Nemtsov was extraordinarily outspoken, I think that he felt that he was safe because there was an unwritten compact in Russian politics, certainly post-Khrushchev, that you didn't kill your predecessors. Every Russian feels, I think, that they could be one day thrown out of power and that they don't want to establish a precedent of going after their predecessors. So Putin had looked after Yeltsin's family and the people in Yeltsin's circle, including Nemtsov, it seemed, but now all bets seem to be off.